Well, hey there, guys. Thanks so much again for joining us. I'm Paul. This is my buddy Aaron. We're going to bring another podcast your way today and hopefully talk about some interesting topics and have some fun doing it. So what are we getting, before we get started today, what are we drinking?
Well, we met this week and we found a really nice beer on tap over at Tap and Fill. Shameless plug, but we'll make sure we mark them in the show notes as well so you guys can see what we've got going on.
Great.
This one is from a brewery called Lost Grove.
Lost Grove.
Lost Grove.
That's right.
She miswrote it. Lost Grove.
Lost
yes.
Grave sounds good too, though.
Especially for the time of year being Halloween right around the corner, and the name of this being Ghost Town Porter.
Perfect.
6.4% ABV.
Yeah, absolutely love that.
We discovered that when we checked it out, that it's got tones of hazelnut.
Yep.
And chocolate or cocoa.
Yeah.
And dark coffee. And so we both were picking up on all of that even before we read the brewer's notes on it.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. I mean, the flavors, it's like I was telling you when I was drinking it, it was like every single sip that I took of it, something else was coming to life for me. And it's one that really kind of grows on you throughout the beer. And I love those so much, like you get so many different beers out there that they're just kind of thank you.
Yeah.
They're just kind of the same all the way through.
If you need a place to sit it, you can sit it on the desk over there. It's a little bit of a reach.
Got to take the top off at first.
Oh,
though.
yeah.
And the smell is really, really nice too. It reminds me of one of my favorite beers in the world. And I'll do this first.
You got to taste it and bring that all in. Man, I get chocolate right away.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yep, me too.
And
it's
then,
interesting when I always smell them. I always smell them first, and the first thing that hits me is that hint of coffee and the chocolate together.
Coffee,
and so
okay.
it's.
I'm picking up
really
the chocolate first, and it's like a ice cream shop kind of chocolate feel. And then right as I'm swallowing, the back of the palate is the hazelnut.
Yeah,
really strong.
It comes back through the nasal, and you still have a hard time with that, right? Because
some things, yeah. So if there were spices in there, like the holiday spices, I struggle to pick those up. Although I've been discovering that some of that's actually coming back a little bit. I'm catching little hints of it. So we'll see. It's been 2 years.
You'll have to tell your story. How you lost of course, is from the.
Yeah, from the name that shall be not named.
The C word, right? Or the C acronym, sorry.
Acronym, yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, that's great.
It's a little bit of a reach to that desk. My apologies.
That's okay. We're still getting the hang of this, so we'll get it down pat one of these days.
Yeah, we got a little new set of technology today. We're trying to work out a dual camera system and see if that works. We've already worked on a little bit of our audio compared to the first one. I hope that those of you that watched our first episode weren't too annoyed by the awkward echoing.
The echoing sound.
It was because we couldn't quite synchronize the sound together, and we tried it a different way this time. So
well, it's like I told you too. So full disclosure, I have a really hard time looking at myself with stuff like this, and so I haven't even watched yet. I'm living it, and I know that one day I will, but until I get the hang of everything, I feel like it's probably best so I don't look like too big of a goober for you guys to just let things happen,
I think that also comes across in the way that you say that right now is also your own self-image and self-awareness.
Absolutely.
And so as we work through this just as friends and as we get other people in on our interviews and things like that, I think that the sound of our own voice and the sight of our own faces from a third party perspective, well, we just won't think about it anymore.
I think so too. Yeah. And you hear that from everybody that does this. I mean, they start off with stuff like this and it's tough at first, it really is. But then you just kind of, and I actually did a YouTube video, which I shall not name yet. I actually did a YouTube channel a few years back, and I had to edit all my own stuff. And so when I did that, I kind of got used to looking at myself that way. And that kind of thing does happen. But I haven't done it for so long that it's just like, seriously, it's like riding. Well, it's not like riding a bike. It's like the old saying: if you don't use something, your brain, you got to exercise your brain,
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
it goes away. And so that's kind of what's happened. I feel like, but it'll come back. It's just going to be a
I'm
matter
sure
of
it will.
time. So
And I also think that, like, I don't like the sound of my own voice. Everybody always hears it because you hear your own resonance inside your own head. But as soon
yeah,
as you hear it on a recording, it always feels or sounds
yep.
different than the way that everybody else is hearing it. So then when you watch it, you're just like, I don't. Who is that
I
guy?
know
I
exactly.
think that also with the quality of audio, it helps
Sure, sure.
to kind of get it, like the person editing it being oneself. So you editing or myself editing,
Mm-hmm.
we can kind of tone the audio to the way we know that we think that we're really speaking with treble and
Sure.
bass and all the midtones and ranges. And then,
Yeah.
of course, just the fullness and quality of audio is a big deal. So anyway, all that technical stuff aside.
Yeah. Well, and it'll change too. I mean, the further we get into this, I mean, things are gonna get upgraded: computers, cameras, sound, everything.
Right.
I like the sound we have right now, but I know it can be better. I mean, it's a good place to start. Everything.
Your hand goes in front of the
I'm
camera
so
there,
sorry.
so just be careful.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good place to start though.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. And especially being able to say that this is filmed on iPhones right now too is kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
Because we have some amazing technology
We do.
in our pockets every single day, and
Yeah.
being able to utilize these and pull them in. And I'm not even using any extensive software to create this. I'm just using iMovie on my Mac to just put all these clips together.
Yeah.
So the only expense so far were these little DJI microphones
Yeah.
that apparently are what everybody's using. I keep seeing podcasts and clips on videos, and people are holding these
They're
specific
holding them,
devices
yeah.
and just holding them and recording themselves.
Yeah.
And some people play around with that, and they take tape on purpose and put it on something funky like a wooden spoon or just something random like a stick, and so it's like the
Shuffling
long
a wooden
rounds.
spoon back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's silly. They're paying attention to it, but they're also not paying attention to it. The juxtaposition.
I think a certain amount of that kind of stuff is really kind of keeping with the spirit of what YouTube was meant to be anyway. I mean, here we are on our phones. I mean, in the beginning, the big, and still to this day, even the biggest videos you're seeing out there, some of the most popular ones are, which I mean is not something that Aaron and I are after. It's not.
No.
We're not just after popularity and all that stuff. But with that being said, I think that what draws people to YouTube is the spontaneity of it. Just getting out and doing something. I mean,
Right.
these action cams are all over the place. The GoPros, initially, a lot of podcasters were using GoPros, and the sound quality on those is terrible. It's terrible.
It's meant to be the video of it, not the collection of audio. So you
Yeah.
always have to have some sort of an accessory attached to that.
Right. But the fact that people could hear it at all, and people were doing what they do, people really dug it. And that's how some of the biggest YouTubers have taken off with that kind of stuff. Just the spontaneity of getting out there and doing something. So
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we have our iPhones, is that ideal? Probably not, but I think it's okay for sure.
I mean,
You guys tell us what you think. Oh, and while we're at it, like and subscribe.
heck yeah.
Mash that like button.
I love it. We're going to have to come up with our own little way of saying that. So
Yeah,
it's kind
right.
of fun.
Yep. Lots to come. Lots of content. You and I have got full brains. We've demonstrated that over the last 3 years. I mean, just some of the stuff we've talked about and covered. Of course, there's always politics and religion, but we've talked about so much more too. There's a lot of stuff we've talked about. So
one of the things I was thinking of talking about today is actually similar to what you and I were discussing the other night when we discovered this beer. Is the way that this statement says it is not exactly how I'm feeling, but I'd love to talk about this plus the other thing you said you wanted to talk about and prepare my brain for in response. So think about that question you asked me the other day. But to kick things off,
I am trying to remember what I asked you the other day. I know it was good. I remember it was good.
Well, it'll come to you.
Okay.
Really, the subject matter today is not so much about politics or religion or, work ethic or what's going on in our economy and our socio-economical environment per se, but rather more about an introspective thought process. So I saw a meme, and it was a post from a gentleman by the name of Brad Williamson, 80, on Instagram. I don't know this person, but it popped up. And it says, a battle that most men don't discuss.
Yeah.
Your body wants sleep. Your mind wants money. But your heart wants more time with them. Stay strong, men. And I think that when it says wants more time with them, I don't think that means with sleep or with money. I think it means with family. Mm-hmm. Because the only purpose why any of us men do what we do when we have families is specifically for them.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have a family if you didn't love them. You wouldn't have a wife, and therefore you wouldn't have children unless you intended on spending time and wanting to be with them every moment of every waking day. And regardless of broken relationships or current relationships, the fact of the matter is that the heart of man, generically speaking, is meant to wants to provide and protect. And then there's the catch-22. I need to sleep so that I can work, but work makes me so tired, and I can't clear my head, so I can't sleep. So then there's the vicious cycle. I've often thought about either making a print on a coffee mug or on a T-shirt that says, "I'm the kind of tired that sleep can't cure."
Yeah.
It's a stress, really. Yeah. And in today's society, where the things I said I wouldn't necessarily talk about, but again, we spoke of the last two times, that everything in my mind is very interrelated. Mm-hmm. In that I struggle with providing for my family because of the politics that are going on right now. I struggle with providing for my family because of the economy that is directly related to politics, that is directly related to so many other things.
Everything's related, yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of, things like people working for a company that's done a lot of bad stuff. I mean, even the government, for instance, there's a lot of government workers out here at the lab. I mean, it's like there's a lot of things that people do for a company that they swore they would, never work for a company like that. But it's like when it comes to, love and money and family and everything else, we gotta, there's certain things. So I know what you're talking about. There's a lot of tie-ins with everything we do.
And really the subject matter that, as I'm boiling this all down, and so maybe this will spur on some conversation, not just between you and I, but also with why this little recording sessions of the things that you and I have been talking about for 2.5 years, however long it is. We're going to have to figure that out.
We are, yeah. Yeah.
I'll just ask Ron and Christina when they moved in, because that's when we met.
That's exactly it, yeah.
Saw their house.
You liked my hat.
I did.
I can't remember what hat it was.
It was Black Rifle Coffee Company.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I was trying to remember that the other night.
We're going to have to give a shameless plug to them sometime soon and give them some coffee in here.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they made this beer with it. I doubt it. This is an Oregon beer, right?
This one specifically has a coffee name, and we should probably pull it up. I'll pull it up in a minute.
Okay.
When
all right.
Maybe you're talking. The word that comes to mind when I'm sitting here working or I'm driving and there's a lot of time to think to myself about this constant struggle is all men, and specifically myself, want a place to belong. Mm-hmm. And so that community, that brotherhood, that family, that church environment, that city or state that one lives in, to have pride of
it all plays into
location, it all boils down to one word: belong.
Yeah.
I want to belong.
Yeah.
I want to be known, and I want to know in return. Or to put it in another perspective, to love and be loved in return. So that's an old saying as well. So what are your thoughts on that as far as belonging? And speak to me as my friend, but also to any of these other men that may eventually watch it. And there may even be women watching this as well, which is fine too.
Yeah.
But let's get into the psyche of what you and I have been dealing with for several years now about belonging. And because the other night when we met, I think it was just last night, gosh, it feels like forever ago,
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of broke inside. I don't know if you saw that, but I started weeping.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
left, and I did some more. I was
Yeah.
just really struggling with my work situation. I was really struggling with,
Got a lot to struggle with,
I
right?
don't
Yeah.
have a church that I belong to, which
Yeah.
is what all of our life has been for my wife and I of 24 years of marriage and our 3 teenage and plus children, aged children. All of us are struggling with that. So without me continuing to talk and talk and talk, do you have any thoughts on that, about who you are
Sure.
and just not just a response to me, but just empathy and walking shoulder to shoulder in this same scenario?
It's tough for me. It's tough for me now because, looking at stuff like this, because I look at things in a very different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, full disclosure on that about me, about a year ago, I had a heart situation that put me in the hospital for about a month. And when that happened, I almost died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a miracle that I'm even here right now. And so when that happened to me, I looked at things different. I still do. And so I had more of that sense of wanting to belong before that. Now I guess I'm just more grateful for every breath that I get to take.
Mm-hmm.
My little boy's got a wrestling match tonight that I shouldn't be there for because I shouldn't have made it last year, and I wouldn't have without the wonderful medical technology that we have these days. And so there's a lot of that going on for me. So it's hard for me to answer that question completely.
That's fine.
I can tell you that before then, and maybe there's something in that for you. Maybe there's something that can help you when you think about it that way. Because if you think about it, we're all dying.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works. And so, yeah, that's a hard question. I can tell you that growing up here, where I'm growing up in Southeast Idaho, it's a really thick demographic with one particular sector of people. There's how do you put that where it's politically correct? There's one dominant religion around
I
here.
call that a
And so-
prevailing culture.
It just is, yeah. And
Yeah.
so, however you want to put it, whatever the politically correct way to do is these days, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously no disrespect or intent meant by anything I'm going to say, but I wasn't the same prevailing culture as the dominant culture that's around here. And so, growing up that way, it's like I told you before. If I'm going to hire somebody for a job, and I need somebody that I trust, am I going to hire somebody that I know, or am I going to hire somebody that I don't know? And when I say no, I mean like somebody that I see once or twice a week, every week. I play with the kids. I play with them, or if I'm parents, I'm with the parents, or whatever the case may be. And so, I'm going to take somebody that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know who they are, I know how much I can trust them, I know what to do, and so that makes belonging hard.
Yeah.
To a place, and I see it a lot. Being in real estate, I see it a lot. There's a lot of people that move to town, and they have a hard time because they didn't grow up with it. They're not used to that. What I've been used to my whole life around here, and so. It's hard. It's hard feeling like you belong around here. I don't think it's intended. I know it's not intended, but it just happens, And it's the same with the kids, with sports, with academics, with anything that, groups, clubs, anything that helps you to feel inclusion. I think I just touched my speaker. Sorry, but anything that helps you to feel included in life and what you do. Like you mentioned, your group of friends, your church, it's hard because even when you do find your church from your hometown here, it's different because it's full of people that grew up here and it's changed who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so the culture is not the same. as what you're used to. And so there's a lot of different aspects like that. I do think that our demographics are definitely changing on a daily basis. I do think that we're diversifying a lot around here, and I think that things are changing that way.
Right.
But so I'm sorry to take this long
No.
approach to answering your question, but I think everything I just said kind of comes from before my whole health scare, and then everything after my health scare is basically, and I don't give a crap anymore. I'm alive, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm so happy to be here and happy to have a chance to hang out with my kids for as much extra time as I have. And so that's a hard question for me, but that's my take on it. And I don't know, maybe you've got some more thoughts.
No, I mean,
This is truly the way we talk. This is it right here.
This is how it started
I love
a
this.
while ago. Is like, dude, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
Like, we all have our hard times.
We all have a hard time, yeah.
You know, you called me up the other day and said the same thing. Like, I just went through all this stuff with work and, you know, all this
rough day.
paperwork and testing and certification, and then it's slow in the market. And so then your issues are valid. Everyone has problems. They're different than the other guy's problems, but that's why friends are there for.
Right.
And I think that there's kernels of truth in everything that either of us would say to each other or to another friend that comes along, or a relationship that you have outside of the, you know, this friendship, that is going to be like, well, I had a heart situation, so I don't think about it the same way, like you just said.
Yeah.
Which still gives me like, hey, maybe I need to take a deep breath.
Yeah, I think we help each other that way.
You know, what is it? You know, slow down, smell the roses, whatever that is.
But I can become too complacent as well. So your in-depth thought about that kind of stuff helps me to remember, dude.
Yeah, that's one of those things
I need to think about it too, you know. You
and I have talked a little bit about, and I have another friend in Florida who I met in college. I've known him longer than I've been married to my wife.
Great guy.
Yeah, Tim. He's such an inspiration to me because he just goes. He just does.
Yeah.
He just, like, there's no hesitation in him. His only hesitation is to think through how to make something happen, not a why or a when or how often do I do this, but rather
it's going to happen.
It's going to go. Like, it's matter of fact.
Yeah.
Like, back when we were in college together, he'd be like, hey, we're going to go do this. You want to come with me? And I'd be like, yeah, but don't we have this and don't we have that? And I've got to, you know, follow all the rules. And he's like, no, stop it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on, man.
And when you get there, it's like, oh, thank you. Thank you for bringing me, you know. And I crave that sometimes out of people because I overthink. But then again, the flip-flop, just like what we're talking about here, is
complacency.
When you're just like, yeah, whatever, nothing matters deeply. I'm not saying that about Tim, but Tim has more of a, let's move quick, let's skim across the top of the water, and I will think too much, and I'll start to fall into the water and start to drown. Yeah. So the biblical analogy of Jesus walking on water and Peter's coming out to him too, and he looks away from keeping his eyes forward to Jesus, and he starts sinking.
Yep.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
About myself. And so even while waiting for an employment situation such as what's still up in the air for me right now, I literally have to tell myself, I'm not one of those like out loud speakers by myself. My wife is. She loves to talk to herself to help her process what's going on. I don't. It's all up in the head. But I keep saying, hey, it's okay. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's okay. My brother-in-law, Jeremiah, says, it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's what he says all the time. It is what it is. Guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that saying annoys the crap out of me. It is what it is. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
But then I start saying it myself. It is what it is. Yeah. Like, you can't change that.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah. I had a friend ask me, a friend that I'm very close to, that you've met. She's a wonderful person. She asked me, she says, how do you pray? And because I told her when I was in the hospital for about a month. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, well, how do you pray? What did you pray about when you're in the hospital? And I said, I really didn't, like you would. Some people are really in depth with their prayers. They really go into detail and everything. And all I ever said every day was one thing, and that's, may your will be done.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do the best I can. May your will be done. Because that's it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have control's a fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that thinks they have control of their life or they're in control of their futures in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion, and this is my beliefs coming out, is it's fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in control. To me, there's only one being that's in control.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day, that's what may your will be done. And to some people, and I get it, if you're one of them out there, and that's totally fine. We can having different beliefs, but to some people, they've got to have answers for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, I guess, anymore. I was that way for a while, but I just don't have to have answers anymore. Now it's just, hey man, it's your will. Let it be done, And am I scared of that? Sure. I mean, am I scared to relinquish control, to think that I'm relinquishing my control to somebody else? Sure, I am, but I'll do the best I can. I'll do what I'm supposed to do, And we all know what we're supposed to do, no matter what we believe or who we are or where we come from. That's right here.
Right.
And so, but yeah, so it's that's what that reminds me of. So
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I like that. I think that even.
But again, that's kind of skimming across the water, you're talking about.
It is,
because I can get complacent that way too if I'm just like walking around.
Well, your quiet time.
Yeah.
With the Lord, because I'm just going to say that because that's what both of us believe.
Sure, absolutely.
You're laying there in the hospital bed, and the only people that you're seeing when you don't have guests coming to visit you are the nurses and doctors, and that's not every single second that you're laying there. So you have a lot of time to
an awful lot of time,
in your own head,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily need to verbalize it. You can still have your prayer life, your prayers to God in that respect. And that's the way I am as well. Although somebody did counsel me a while ago that when I'm walking, I should just try to speak it out loud.
Yeah.
Because it changes the way, and that reminds me, because you've inspired me on this, I need to be walking more often because
I think all of us do.
Get the endorphins going and get to know the neighborhood.
That's what Melissa has came up. She has just said that it's changed because I've got her walking too, She said it's just completely changing the way she thinks. Makes her more positive.
So I had a friend back in California that when I was going through a really hard time too, I would just go take a walk every day for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I would actually speak out loud as if I were walking alongside the Lord right with me and just weep, laugh. It sounds crazy. I'm not a crazy person, but he is a being. He is alive. He is.
Mostly when I'm in the shower.
He is there. Yeah, I don't do the shower thing because it's too fast. I just get in and get out.
Yeah.
But to take the time to really just express who you are, and this is where I like the psalmist David in the scriptures. Is he just tells God how he feels, and then he remembers what his promises, what God's promises were. So
I remember you told me that. Yeah.
You kind of have to express it and then remind yourself of what you memorized and then say it again, but with control. And then say again what you know God is. You repeat his attributes, and that's what gives the peace in it all. So I do try to read my Bible every morning to help me regain that perspective. Yeah. But walking or even just praying is just supposed to be a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are people who pray to their deity, to their God, whatever they want to call it, and there's a real big formality to it, and there is supposed to be that as well. There's an awe and a respect, but then there's also a familiarity. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that actually answers even just saying that out loud, the original premise here. I belong to him.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Then there's I belong to my family. I belong to my wife and my kids.
Yeah. Yep. We just belong where we are at the time we're there, and does that mean we don't strive for goals and aspirations? Of course not. I mean, we definitely. I mean, I believe that we're supposed to do that. I mean, that's why I'm still doing what. I mean, I could have gave up a year ago and just said, okay, well, I guess I'm done. You know, but I didn't do that. I've still got a lot of stuff that I want to accomplish personally in my life, and I want to watch my kids grow. I'd love to see some more grandkids. I only got one. Got one on the way. Did I tell you that? Yeah. She's got one. Got another one on the way. So, but I think I think that I think we all, you know what? Moderation in all things.
Absolutely.
Including moderation. I think that's kind of the moral. I think that's kind of the moral of everything, you know. So
Moderation and
I had
moderation.
a college professor tell me that. It was my psychology professor, first year in school. He says moderation in all things, you guys, including moderation. So, but he's not wrong, because I think we can get
interesting double entendre there.
Yeah, well, I think we can get our brains really tied up with thoughts, you know. And it can really mess us up, and we forget the peace. We forget the grace. We forget the, you know, just taking a breath. And I am so bad for that. You know that. I mean, I've gotten so keyed up sometimes when we're talking, and I have a bad temper and everything else. And I, you know, you guys will probably see it, because I mean, I get that way sometimes, you know. And you're always there to, now here's just a different way to think about it. I love that. That's one of the things that really clicks with you and I. So I'm happy. I'm really thankful for this relationship too. You know, all my friends and family and everything. Jonathan's another one that has a good effect on me like that. So he's pretty busy in his life now, but
yeah. Your son is he's just like you. And yet he's different than
he's
you.
different, yeah, right.
And it's great.
I always tell him he's got the best parts of his mom, because she's so calm all the time. And, you know, I wish I could be that way, just calm, you know. And I get that way sometimes, but it's hard.
I think that with age, that also is something that, because if we strive towards an internal goal, I think that we attain it. So if that is something that's been in your thought process for a really long time, about staying calm and not having, you know, going from 1 to 10 real quick, that might be what you deal with.
Yes, it is.
What I deal with about my long-term education or self-education is actually the ability to communicate clearly.
Yeah.
That's what I want to be known as being a good communicator. I have always struggled with feeling as though I'm being very clear when I say what I want to say. But sometimes in my past I've explained too much to get to my point, and people just lose interest. There's been other times when I don't say enough and they lose interest in what I'm saying, or they don't understand that there's a prerogative, there's a, you know, an intent behind what I'm asking for or saying straight up, or to take me seriously, or to laugh at my jokes, or then that actually cued another thought, that I'm too serious all the time, that when I do joke, when I do jest in my communication, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or
I don't know, you've had me rolling a few good times.
But then there's the other times when I will laugh at something and people are like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you laughed at that. Yeah. Like, wait, am I that stoic all the time that you don't think that I have a sense of humor?
You're pretty stoic, man. You're pretty stoic.
And I don't like that about part of myself, because I'm a rather jovial guy. I get along with a lot of people, but that's also
you're the mayor. So
apparently.
That's a story we gotta tell. Yeah. So we're out eating dinner one night, and Aaron here, we're sitting there talking, and everybody that walks by, it's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, hey, how you doing? You know, hey, Tom, what's up? And there's this couple sitting right next to us. And
I've never met before.
Yeah, the guy finally looks over and says, what are you, the mayor or something? So it's like, no. It was so funny. Yeah, that was pretty fun. Melissa got a pretty big kick out of that, too.
You keep calling me the mayor every time we're over at our local watering hole or the restaurants right there, because it's funny.
You're a really outgoing. I was kidding with you too. I was kidding, not kidding. I'm pretty introvert, which is really surprising for my profession. I'm a real estate agent, and I'm pretty successful at it. Not patting myself too much on the back. I got a lot of help in a lot of ways with it, but I'm very introverted, and so. Like a lot of the people will come in and talk to you, and I just kind of look at my phone or put my head down.
That's why I'm always like, hey,
Yeah,
my friend
he's
Paul?
always like, "Come on, Paul. This is so and so." And so I've got to be extroverted a little bit, and that's good for me. But I'm by nature I'm an introverted guy, and you're extroverted. You really dig the interaction with people. But I think that's probably because of what I mentioned earlier. I think I kind of grew up here, and I just learned to
Keep your head down.
I learned to play with myself, not didn't mean that bad, but you know what I'm saying.
That's why you did the air quotes.
Yeah,
I get you.
Yeah, I learned that I did things on my own.
Independent.
It was independent. Yes, that's a better way to put that. You can edit that out if you want to. So anyway.
Not anymore now that we laughed at it.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, and maybe that's where it came from, and I can't remember where that was going. So.
Well, just to the same point about the belonging and the difference between you and I, and you don't find the energy being given to you by being extroverted, whereas myself, and I think that where you're going with this was the idea of the belonging, the sense of belonging.
Yeah.
There's something that my wife and I have talked about a lot, is two definitions of two words: acquaintance and friend.
Mm-hmm.
Another way of saying that is a lot of people, or one may know a lot of people, but how many friends do you have?
Yeah, that's such a great point.
And so I think that that's where, even spending time thinking back on both the pros and the cons of having lived my entire first part of my life, 40 years in California, about the number of people that we know, did they know me?
I've got to go someday. I told you got to be my tour guide someday.
We got to wait until California kind of
I've never been.
Recovers a little bit.
This is the crazy thing. Here I am, an Idaho native, so to speak, and you're a California native, and I've never been there ever. And you've been all over the place, a lot more places than I have, and I've never been there. So, but
which is kind of interesting too, because I feel like I haven't really gone very many places at all compared to like our friend Charlie. Who,
sure, yeah.
He's military, and that's an obvious
military folks. Yeah, they're just
travel and travel, so they're world traveled.
Well, Melissa too. She's been everywhere.
Wow.
I mean, just everywhere. You know, she's I got to take you. I got to take you to Maine, and boy, it's a sad situation. What's going on over there right now? Prayers for Maine.
Yeah, I just heard about that today. So
yeah. Prayers for Maine and Israel and everybody. Bull.
Yep.
I mean, it's like
absolutely.
There's so much going on right now.
Even our, I know what you were going to ask me, and so this is the caveat and the transition.
Then we got to come back full circle to
our. So prayers for Maine, prayers for Israel, prayers for our Congress, because we just got a new.
That's it.
That was it. We got a new Speaker of the House yesterday. And I'm actually pretty excited about it. I didn't know anything about him, Mike Johnson.
Not many people did, it sounds like. I was reading a little bit about it.
But apparently he's already been quite the leader in the last 7 years that he's been a congressman.
Good.
And he loves the Lord. He's all about
which we love.
Yes. The success of America, and that government is for the people, by the people, not over the people.
Mm-hmm.
Literally in his original statements, He's talked about his faith. He's talked about his intentions. He's talked about how we need to give government back to the people.
Yeah.
And this is raising a lot of feathers. So the question that you were asking me the other night so that we could potentially talk about this.
So what happened?
Was why did this all happen?
Yeah.
And I don't have all the deep answers there, but what I'm gathering is that the promises that the previous and very short-term speaker, Kevin McCarthy, made in order to get his position and be nominated and therefore elected in, which ran nearly 17 votes. Like, it took a long time to get him in.
Yeah, it did.
I believe that Matt Gaetz, who sounded the alarm against McCarthy and ousted him in a way that has never, to my recollection, and may need to stand corrected on this, never's happened before where a speaker is actually asked to step down, is that he wasn't fulfilling the promises that he made to his own party and to his constituents, and that was in direct opposition to an agenda of restoring America. And I believe that there were, from what I'm picking up, there were some backdoor deals that he made with the opposite side of the aisle that were unacceptable to the party for which he stands. So was a Republican, ironically out of California, which is, there are not many of them. So that's interesting. But I'm curious to know if he...
And the ones that are there...
Are they more Democrat-leaning, left-leaning than...
They have to be to survive, you know.
Right. So I believe that's what really happened, and there were probably some very specific details, and obviously far beyond my comprehension.
Right.
Plus, I don't have the education of the scenarios that happened. But he was ousted, and then there were several other names that were put up as nominees to replace him from the GOP, and one of which I thought was a shoo-in, Jim Jordan, but he didn't make it either, and he went through 3 or 4 different rounds of a deliberation and of voting.
What took them so long? What took them so long to get somebody in? And was it just they couldn't make up their minds?
There wasn't enough votes.
Okay.
There wasn't a consensus, and there weren't enough votes. And it's that they knew how many Democratic votes there would be because the number of representatives that there are.
Okay.
And so there has to be this mathematical equation that calculates up to the 218.
Because the Democrats have to vote for him as well as the Republicans for the Speaker.
Well, they put their own nominee up, so there was a nominee on the Democratic side, but they weren't going to win because they're not the majority.
Right.
And so with those numbers, there had to be a specific. It's not a unanimous, but it had to be a mathematical equation that would work, and Jim Jordan never got it because others were. There were a list of 8 names that were holdouts that could have made it happen, and they did it multiple times. And sadly, one of those was our representative from Idaho, Mike Simpson. So I actually tried to call his office, but apparently everyone else in Idaho did the same thing, and I couldn't get through to say, hey, please vote for Jim Jordan. That's who I want. I didn't know anything about Mike Johnson.
Well, that's good.
Because he's from Kentucky or... something.
The neat thing though is that you called. I mean, you're trying to take part in your governmental process. That's something that I really need to work on doing too myself.
I feel
really
kind of
think
convicted that I need to be.
I think it's our civic duty.
Absolutely,
we need to all be doing it. You know, it's something that I actually wrote a letter this year. I wrote a letter to the mayor. I know it's not the same level.
No, my father-in-law does it all the time.
Yeah, I wrote a letter to the mayor because, I mean, our property taxes here in Idaho have tripled in a lot of places, quadrupled in some places. And it was the worst pothole year ever. That I've lived here my whole life, which is 50 years now. And, well, take away college days, whatever. I've never seen the potholes so bad, Aaron. Ever. And this last winter, everybody, it was snowmageddon. It was, we had those every year when I was a kid. Yeah. I mean, and because things are changing a little bit here and there, it's not as bad as it used to be, but the potholes were terrible. I bought a new truck last year. You spend a lot of money on a vehicle these days. And I had a pothole about swallowed my truck up. I wrote a letter. And I made phone calls, and I even called Idaho Traffic Department, the Idaho Department of Transportation, and because I'm like, this needs fixed. This is ridiculous. And you guys are making more revenue than you ever have
with our taxes.
High.
That's exactly what our local taxes are supposed to be for. Is for our infrastructure, which is what's governed by our city and our state and our nation. That's what government is for. Is to support our infrastructure.
Yes, and there's that's representation.
Yes.
Is what it is. If you think about it, it's a form of representation. If I'm going to give you my tax dollars, you're going to represent me by taking care of what you need to take care of around me. So, I was livid. I'm like this, and I went after it. I wrote a big 4-page letter. And and then another thing, I mean, I'm in real estate. So, I mean, I've sold some properties to folks. Like I sold a fourplex for $700,000 to some folks. And it wasn't 4 months later, they had a tax assessment that valued it at $1.2 million. Overnight, just like that.
Yeah.
And
Did
I was
they
like,
actually have an assessor come in and evaluate the property?
it's
No.
unbelievable.
All of us have just gotten that notification as well, saying that our property taxes just went up. Yet nobody's evaluating that there's anything different about my property than there was from
And
today
there's
to
nothing
tomorrow.
there's nothing we can do about it.
No.
There's nothing we can do about it. We can't call somebody. We can't dispute it. We can't. I mean, we can try. You're not going to get anywhere with it. But the thing that's so upsetting to me is that when they do stuff like this, there's nothing to show for it.
Right.
There's no new parks. There's no better road repair. Our bridges around here, our infrastructure's in shambles. So anyway, I won't stay on that soapbox, but it's for sure.
However, this is still related to the belonging because our place of residence is a belonging thing. And as a man of the house, to protect your assets, and there's still a splash left in this can.
Is there?
It's yours.
I'll take it.
And we can open the other one if you like. You paid for it.
Well,
protecting the assets.
You paid for the last 2 podcasts, so it was my turn.
Protecting the assets of which we pay for, or our wives as they and our significant others are participating in, but our vehicles. And so we can't just buy a new car when you pop a tire and bust a rim because of somebody else's, because we can't afford it anymore, for one. And that's just not stewardship of our own property to just, it's broken, so I'm going to get rid of it and buy a new one.
That brings up a fantastic
doesn't
point.
make any sense.
That's not stewardship.
No.
We're not even taking care of things. When we have a state intersection that's getting so bad that it's, I mean, and let's face it, we're not even, there's a lot of people that are a lot worse off than you and I are.
Yes.
And they're getting their lives, if somebody loses a front end because of a pothole, that's life ruining for some people.
Because you can't get to work, you can't get to school, you can't take your kids to school, you're stuck.
Yes.
Because the catch-22 is you have to work to make money so that you can pay your taxes and your living expenses, but you can't get to work, so therefore you can't.
I'm going to say this is a challenge. I want to issue a challenge to our audience because it's going to grow. Pick something out and fight for it. Just one thing. Yeah. I know everybody's always saying, get involved with your government, do this, do that. That's too broad. I'm reading a book right now, by the way. I'll have to tell you the name of it. We'll have to put it in the comments because it's a fantastic book. But it's a book about habits. And habits can change your entire world as you know it.
Agreed.
But they start small. And so along with that theme of starting small, I would challenge our whole audience and anybody around us, just pick one small thing that you can do civically with your government. Like me writing a letter to my mayor. It's not as grand of a scale as the Speaker of the House, but it's something to get started.
It is. And
if we could each do that once a month, maybe even once every 6 months, just pick something out that you're going to fight for a little bit.
I love that.
I really think it's a good idea.
It's an amazing perspective, and it's an amazing sense of responsibility, and therefore an amazing challenge that you're issuing to our viewers here.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's important, not just in government, but in all aspects of your life. To never just sit here and just take what you're given with nothing ever given back.
Yes.
Meaning, question everything.
Yes.
Not in an insubordinate manner, but rather in a humble manner. Mm-hmm. Meaning, you're allowed to ask questions.
Yeah.
You should just ask, well, why? How?
Why?
When?
Ask why. Yep.
Just ask.
What can I do?
Be okay with whatever the answer is, unless the answer is wrong, meaning it's morally or ethically wrong. And then you challenge it. But there's your little in, because you actually questioned something and you verbalized it and you spoke it out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're mediocre.
Yeah, that's right.
You're gray.
Yes.
You're boring. You are just...
And it challenges yourself, too. When you do that, it challenges yourself. You ask yourself questions. Wait a minute.
Like, what do you believe?
Yes.
How do you think?
Yeah.
What are your actions? Do your actions and your beliefs line up? Excellent point.
Yeah. 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 That book, I'll have to remember it. I can't, obviously,
No worries.
but I will remember. I'll tell you the book, and then we can post it for you guys because it's fantastic.
Because we can all complain.
Yeah.
And even this little statement right here I was going to read related to our taxes, another meme that spoke up to me. It's a complaint. But what are we going to do about it? So you and I are doing something. We're trying to talk about our politics, our religion, our work,
our daily lives. Everything,
We're talking about what hurts, what makes us happy. I started off with something that hurts for me.
Yeah.
And it's vulnerability. It is. But where do I go from there? Where do you go from where you're at?
I think this ties full circle into what we opened up with too. Our hearts want one thing, our minds want one thing. You know, I mean, it's important that we recognize. I think that every one of us should seriously think about that. Think about what our body wants, our heart wants, our mind wants, all that stuff, and write it down. Just write it down, and then in line with that, you could even take what I just said, little habits, and go for what you need to go for to make things. You've got to have balance.
I don't think that you made that statement bold enough. I think that you could say it again.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Write it down.
What does that mean? Write it down. Whether you have a journal, whether you have a whiteboard on the wall that has room for one word.
Yeah.
What do you want in life? Where are you going, and why are you going there?
That's something I've had to redefine this last year. And I've had to redefine it. And all of us will. When we face that crisis, that existential crisis that we're all going to face someday, you have to make a decision. I can either give up and roll over and be done, or I'm going to have to rethink things and have a whole new set of things that I'm going to go for.
From one perspective, the subject matter of belonging actually is hand in hand with a goal. If you have no goals, you don't know where you're going.
Melissa would love you for this.
You can't get there.
Yeah.
And you don't belong to your own goal.
Yeah.
You don't belong to yourself. You don't belong to your family because you're not leading yourself. You're not leading them anywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
There's my vulnerabilities, because this is what I ask myself all the time. I have yet to come with an answer, and it cannot be my job.
Yeah.
Because I've tried to find my identity in my vocation. My vocation being the artist, the graphic designer by trade, the marketing and advertising guy that I am, that I work for companies and I promote them. I make them successful if, things are in alignment.
Right.
But when it comes down to who I am and what I stand for, what am I doing with life? Where am I leading my wife?
I love what we're doing right now.
Where
I really do.
I? Yeah. Where am I, and why am I teaching my children to suffer the little things so that they can benefit from the great things, the hard work?
And you hit it right on the head right there. That is something that we need to be passing on to our youth more than anything else.
Yep.
It's like every day you wake up, you do something uncomfortable. You have to.
Ooh.
And I mean, it's like I told Thomas just this morning.
Yeah, getting out of bed is uncomfortable for me right now.
Get out of bed. Pull those covers off.
Yeah.
You've got to start there with doing something uncomfortable.
Because our society wants to call that depression.
Oh, yeah.
I struggle with it. I struggle with my desires to continue.
Yeah.
What that means, it doesn't mean I have suicidal thoughts or
Sure.
anything, but some do.
Yeah.
And seek help. Call us. Like, don't
text.
Don't be alone.
For sure.
Do not be alone.
Write in the comments.
This is super important.
Yep.
That got heavy.
It really did. Yeah. For me too.
But
Because I've
rolling out
struggled
of
with
bed
it too. And if the truth be told, I would say 90% of us probably do.
100%.
Maybe even
agree
more.
with that statement. Yes.
And so, yeah.
If your goal is to just get out of bed, you've accomplished something.
Oh,
Look at it from that perspective. Not, okay, here comes the day.
Yeah.
No, you know what? You took step one. Literally step one.
Yeah.
You took a step. As painful as that step is physically or emotionally, you took it.
Yeah.
I took it. Now, why am I going and packing up my bag and putting on my jacket? And by the way, first day of snow for us here in Idaho Falls, and it's snowing outside right now.
I like the snow.
It's a little late in the season, but
I'm not. I don't like it as much as I used to because I'm getting older. But things hurt a little more. Yeah, right. But
my point though is why am I going to work? What am I doing?
Yeah.
How am I affecting positive change? And
Yeah.
that's the ticket.
Yeah.
You don't just go just to make a paycheck. And I don't want to be the guy that just goes to just make a paycheck and then just leave.
yeah,
I'm too deep of a thinker. Getting back to what we're doing here is I want to make a difference. I want to belong. I want to be a part of something that makes a difference in this world.
right.
I want to, not for selfish gain, because obviously where I'm going with this, that wouldn't make any sense. But I want to be known as, after I die, that my obituary would say that he did things to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I, whoever was saying this or writing this or speaking it, was better because Aaron was,
No, I did the same thing.
was in my life.
Yeah.
And not just because I was in their lives, but because I inspired,
Yeah.
because I was inspired.
I
And
feel that way. I feel
there's this brokenness right now because of
yeah.
what's going on in our entire world, what's going on in our nation, what's going on in our state, what's going on in our county, city, and in our specific realm that
then
the
in
two
our
of
sphere,
us,
yeah.
Paul and Aaron, are dealing with.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of inspiration or hope for the average person to just, I get up every day because this is amazing and everything's hunky-dory. No, a lot of stuff is dark right now.
Yeah, it really is.
But this boils down to faith.
And this is a great podcast topic right now, right here, because we are coming into fall. We're coming into winter. It is, and things start closing down, and you feel it.
I think that I'm actually affected by that in a way that I never thought my entire life I would be.
Absolutely. Me too.
I used to think when I lived in California, I want to move to Oregon. I want it to rain every single day. No, Aaron, that's too gloomy.
Yeah.
Like, nah. I'm a better person than that.
Those folks, they're special.
For being here for 5.5 years now, almost 6. Holy crap. Come February, we'll be 6 years here.
So I got to tell this. I got to say this. I've known you for 3 years now, or we got to figure that out exactly how long it is. Yeah. So right around there. I've always called you Jonah. And if you don't know the story, look it up in the Bible and you'll know why. Aaron's my Jonah friend. He's from California. And
God help me.
Yep. It's tough. This area is tough to belong to. The whole topic of this.
And the weather is a big part of it. And I never would have thought it because I came from the sunny state of California where it's sunny every single day.
A nice 70 to 80 degrees all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's cold when it's 60. We all put our parkas with the fur on.
And now if it's 60, we're putting our shorts on, and you're even used to that now. So it's.
I'm actually wearing 2 shirts today, a t-shirt and an overshirt. Yeah. This is the first time in
me too.
Months.
Yep, I just tapped my microphone.
Normally I'm just in a t-shirt.
I'm giving you these sound points so you can mesh things up.
So I had this on my lap, but it is a moot point almost anymore. But this is referring to recognizing the scenario, but then where we went is to find your goals so that you can attain them. So do something about it.
Yeah.
And then we went into take the first step, even if it's getting out of bed. We had a very logical progression to this thought process. But what started this was we were talking about taxes, property taxes, right?
Yep.
So I saw this. The biggest scam in life is paying taxes on the money we make, paying taxes on the money we spend, taxes on the things we own that we already paid taxes on with already taxed money. And I would add one more statement, and then when we die, our family has to pay taxes on us dying.
Yes, I know it. That's powerful, actually. Yeah.
It's incredibly sad.
It is.
But I almost want to say that this needs to be a rally cry to say that our founding fathers threw tea in the harbor for far less of a problem than what we're dealing with right here, which was they had an extra 2% tax on their tea from England because we were still a province of England. We weren't quite a nation
and
yet.
we all know
and
this.
yet we all should know this.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's a big statement
If
for me to say.
you do not know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. We already talked about
This is
that
why.
last episode.
This is why.
But this is why. We have to do something about it. This is one way that I feel convicted personally. I almost want to run for some political office. I don't know what that would be, but I've been so inspired because I'm not being represented.
Yeah.
My wife and my children are not being represented. What really turned me on to this whole tax thing is not just having been taxed my entire life of working, but as soon as my children took up the mantle of working at 15, 16, 17, my daughter's still 17, not even 18 yet. You're not allowed to vote until you're 18 years old, but you have to pay taxes for 4 years.
That's right.
Before that, if you have a job at 15.
Yeah. That's right.
3 years, but whatever the cycle
Or we
is.
can get drafted at 18.
And I'm really, really angry with the fact that they are not being represented.
Yes.
From a political perspective, because they can't vote. Well, Aaron, your vote is represent. Well, if now all of a sudden at 18 they get to vote on their own, and yet they still live in my home, then the analogy breaks. And if they're working and money is being taken from them, but they can't say anything about it and who it gets to go to, then we're not being represented well as a people.
That's right.
Because then that statement is, where do I go from here? Yeah. I'm not happy with 25 to 27% of my income, and other people are getting more based on the certain brackets that we have income from, which being taken away. It's dumb. Yeah. And I can't say anything to anyone about it. And then when you really think about it, even the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who still is my president, even though he's not put personally specifically in office at this moment, he still has taxes that he's supposed to pay. And that becomes a sticking point. So even if the President of the United States can't get away from paying taxes, then what is going on?
Yeah.
We are not being represented well.
Right.
So how can I affect positive change for my fellow Americans, as well as asking my representatives to represent me? Because we're not a democracy. Everybody keeps trying to make this democracy. What a democracy is mob rule.
That's correct.
That's not what America was founded upon.
Yeah.
America's Constitution...
Purposefully, by the way. We're purposefully not a democracy because they knew that a democracy could become corrupt.
Which is exactly what's happening literally today.
Yeah, because they're preaching democracy. Oh, we live in democracy.
Because when you redefine all your words and you keep pounding that into everybody's heads and they're just like mindless robots and don't actually know their history, they're doomed now to repeat it. Yeah. When you don't understand that we're a republic, a representative form of a republic.
That's right.
We are supposed to have a hierarchical structure of representation all the way up to the top.
Right down to our voting system.
All three of our political systems.
I'm gonna shameless plug. So the one thing I've always told you and all my other friends, I'm gonna say it again. If we had one rep per county across the whole country that voted the way that county voted for our presidential elections and all of our other elections, everything would be solved. Because right now, we're being ran by high population hotspots around the whole country. And that's not okay because they're not controlling 90% of the country. But they're changing the rules for 90% of the country. Then we have our popular vote,
and then we have the electoral college.
And I'm a fan of electoral if it's one rep per county.
It's not represented evenly.
So
the larger states that have more population end up having
just think
more
if you
power.
have one rep for Orange County.
Yeah.
One rep.
For Los Angeles.
Yeah.
For Sacramento.
One rep. That's all you get. You guys vote well because you got one rep for your county.
And you can't handle it with one person, then set up a system down below you.
Yep.
And have a delegation system to where it's per neighborhood
but no
or
matter
borough,
what,
as they
but
say
no
in
matter
New
what,
York.
whatever you guys come up with, you got the one rep's vote for your county. That's it. So have fun with that. And then that would be countrywide, and however many votes we got from the reps, that's what happened. And I guarantee it'd clear it all up. It would clear it all up. We would have, it would be more evenly distributed, as far as like different things. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's my shameless plug for that. I've said that my whole
I
life.
think you're into something.
So, but it would require a constitutional change, which is like, as you know,
Yeah.
a hard thing.
Well,
But
I don't know that
I do think our electoral system is
electoral
outdated.
is
I do.
not in the Constitution the way that it's functioning today.
Not the way it's functioning today for sure. So
Then we throw in all of the
I
electronic
don't think it
voting
was
systems
ever
that are
intended. I
rigged,
think if our
so-
forefathers would have known what our country was going to turn into, they wouldn't want these small city centers, well, large city centers, I guess, if you want to, that's fine. But they're still small relative to the whole country, city centers, because they're packed with people. They wouldn't want them running everything in the whole country. I know that. I know they wouldn't. They couldn't. I mean, how's that even
Well,
logical?
really, what it should be boiling down to is this misunderstanding of what government's job is.
Yeah,
Federal government, state government, city government.
that's very true. Very,
That's
very
the
true.
biggest problem.
That is a huge problem.
Because the government now has been... It's taken on its own life because the corruption of man desiring power above all else.
That we do, too. All of us.
And the Constitution and our founding fathers spoke to this as well. In that, if we had a representative form of government, then we wouldn't have people who are selfishly aspiring for power.
Right.
Which is a monarchical system, like a king and a lord and a...
We're kind of headed back that way, aren't we?
We
or
are.
a dictator.
In the way that it is
or
dictator, yeah.
Yeah, dictatorship.
And
That's
in
that's
that
the scary
respect, the
one.
communism and the socialism realm of all of that stuff.
It
But
reminds me of the
when-
biblical story. It's like the people just begged for a king. Give us a
Yes.
king. Give us a king. Give us a king. Okay.
All right, here you go.
Here you go. Here's your king.
You're exactly on to where I'm going, which is that we've abandoned our first love.
Yeah.
To speak in scriptural terms, we've abandoned God, and God has said, "Fine, you want this? I'll let you have it.
Have at it.
And you're going to destroy yourselves. Oh, you're going to start calling back to me. You're going to cry to me. All right, I'll welcome you back, but you're going to abide by my laws, by my rules, and the way that I set this up because I made you.
Yeah.
So why are you rebelling against me? I made you. So if we get to the place where we come back to God, and that's why I'm so excited about our current brand new Speaker of the House, is his first order of business was to pray.
Yeah.
And he asked everybody to come and pray with him. That individual self-discipline would be what reigns over a government who currently is trying to reign over us.
Mm-hmm.
The government has made itself into a place where we take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what the government was meant to do.
No.
The government was just there to protect us from foreign entities.
That's correct.
And here we are opening our borders up, and foreign entities are running in.
8 million, you said?
And we've
or 8
decided,
million,
yes.
something like that, like 8 million
Across
people in
the
the
southern
last
border.
how many years or whatever? Whatever.
Ever since
it's
Biden's change.
It's crazy.
It really is.
It's seriously crazy and scary. You think about
But
the
if-
security risk of that.
Right.
You know,
And it's not just people from
let's
that one
think about
country.
Orange County again. How many people live there? 3 or 4 million?
I don't even know.
I don't know.
anymore.
I'm not sure. That's probably a completely wrong number. Yeah. See, we gotta Google this.
But anyway, to your point. Yep, 3.1 million.
3.1 million people in Orange County, and we've had 8 million cross the border since Biden got in.
Yeah, the representative from
That's
Kennedy,
Flat out
Representative
scary.
Kennedy from Kentucky brought this point up to when he was questioning members of DHS this past week, and none of them could answer him as to how many people had actually crossed the border, even though it was a trick question because he knew, but these reps from our own Department of Homeland Security couldn't answer it, and they're the top dogs. He referenced the number of 8 million that you're referencing, and he's like, that's 4 Nebraskas.
Think about that, you know.
The population of Nebraska times 4.
So
that's 4 new states.
How do you stay a country with a common goal in mind? How do you stay a country with, the only reason we are what we are today is because our forefathers had goals in mind. We had the Constitution, we had standards and procedures in mind of how we ran. Yeah. How do you continue to be a country if you are just allowing people to freely cross these open borders that they're all promoting without any language, without any thought, we got people crossing over that there's so many different thoughts.
Again, because of where I started this whole conversation, I'm introspect, I'm very deep, and I think through it. I believe that the solution to the short answer is we got to come back to God.
Oh, yeah.
But not just coming back to him, but learning him, knowing him, believing in him, and following his order. Because God is a God of order.
Yeah.
And there are laws and there are rules in place, specifically 1, to glorify God, and 2, to respect your neighbor.
Yeah.
And in order to respect your neighbor, because you want to be, love your neighbor, respect your neighbor. Mm-hmm. To be loved or respected in return means that you have to do it first.
Yeah.
And if no one loves each other and nobody respects each other, then you have what? Chaos, which is what we've got going on right now.
And that's what's going to happen.
Because the first thing, which is love God, is gone. So now how can we love each other if we don't love the one who made us all? Mm-hmm. So it's just a simple logical conclusion that if we abandon this, then this is going to happen. If this, then that. Let's go back.
It's like a computer
How
program.
Can we call back?
Then, yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Learn who he is, learn his laws, and then you'll have liberty. Now, I did say the word liberty. Freedom and liberty are 2 different things, mm-hmm. and yet they're mutually inclusive. You cannot have liberty without law. And that doesn't mean that you can't do whatever you want to do. It means that you can do whatever you want to do within the confines
It's not rocket
of a
science.
Structure.
This stuff has been in the making for thousands of years.
And yet all that we've seen in all the people screaming and yelling and lighting buildings on fire and flipping police cars over the last 3 years is complete lawlessness. Mm-hmm. The exact opposite of order.
Of what you need, yeah.
And how is it that I'm going to be convinced that that's the way the life, and that's the life that I want? Mm-hmm. Is your lawlessness, is now that's supposed to be some form of model to be followed? Or you want to make a point, so you light a building on fire? I'm going to ignore your point. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So getting back to...
I'm going to concentrate on putting you in jail because you're destroying property.
Yep.
Which is against the law. And so, yeah.
So getting back to my original personal goal sets is to be known for my communication, being clear and concise. The best way to do that is to have a common ground, a presupposition, a place upon which all argument and debate can happen when you all agree to the same thing. The Constitution of the United States was supposed to be that for us all.
It was, yeah.
And when that's being torn
and
up
it still
by lawless
is. We need
people,
to return to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then we can't have these arguments. We can't have these debates. And instead, people are rioting. People are murdering. People are over differences of opinions.
Yes, exactly. We can have our differences of opinion and we can argue and we can fight all the way up to a point where we've got to stop because there's a standard. And once you trounce that standard, once you get rid of that standard, then your true problems are going to arise.
So we've identified a lot of these things in our conversation here. And we've been...
it's noticed
talking for a little bit, but to our other point, and we're a little over time this time.
Yeah.
Taking action. Okay, making a phone call to your local state representative or your senator. Making a phone call to your mayor. Getting involved in the school board so that the school is affecting positive change to the education of our children, not the miseducation of our children. That it's not that we keep a level head about ourselves based on a standard. So have a standard, believe in that standard,
Fight for it.
fight for that standard,
Yeah.
and then lead with that standard.
Yeah.
So this is our
And to point to
our
myself,
personal goal.
I need to work on consistency to do that stuff. I mean, I think that,
Well, this goes to child rearing too.
yes,
In that you can't
absolutely.
expect your child to be an upstanding member of society if there's never any rules in your own home.
Yeah.
And
Or to get out of bed every morning if you're being inconsistent with getting them.
We've had this notion that we need to not crush the spirits of these sensitive souls. Well, no, that's humanism, that's selfishness, that's brokenness talking there.
And it's leading
order
them, and
and structure.
It's leading them to such hardship in their futures
Because they can't learn. Because that requires discipline and structure. To learn something requires discipline.
Yeah,
Discipline doesn't mean
and
your
in the
ass
culture
getting
overall.
spanked.
In the culture overall, it's like if everybody gets the trophy, eventually things break down. I mean, that's just one thing. I mean, there's so many things that.
But it's a picture of all the other things.
It is. It really is, because there's so many things that's going on, and it's breaking our culture down day by day, year by year, generation by generation. And so we have a big job, and that's part of the reason for what we're doing here. You and I talked about this. It's like we need to share some of this stuff because it's our voice, it's our thoughts, and it comes from good, hearty places. In our family's past. My grandfather was, he reared me till I was in my 20s, and then passed away. And your own father and mother. Yep. I mean, you have a good family, and I think that people like us should stand up and make other people realize that there's the good way, and there's the out of control way. Just putting it in layman's terms.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're just circling the toilet.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
I don't want that. I don't want that for my children.
No.
I don't want that for my grandchildren.
I don't either. So.
Well, if that's not a way to get out of the ho-hums of, I don't know where I belong, I don't know what else is.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. We've just solved the world's problems.
That's usually what happens is I just need to talk it through, and I need to, lubricate the
Sure.
the process in which that goes, take off the sharp edges, because life is sharp, and
it's all about perspective.
Yeah,
it really is. If
so I would hope that this is,
that's what you've given me so many times, is perspective. Because I am, like I told you, or like I said, told our audience and you earlier, I'm my flashpoints faster than most people. It really is. I mean, I've always had that.
Yep.
And so
yeah, we've been through some of those with you.
We have absolutely. And so I mean, trying to, it's all about introspective too. You got to be introspective, And
so my hope is that with this little conversation, this hour and whatever it's been, hour and 20 minutes, that even if somebody who's watching this doesn't agree with everything that we're saying,
of course,
that they wouldn't lash out in some form of, I hate you, I'm never doing anything, but yet you still follow the channel.
Yeah, just think
about it.
But
instead, find inspiration in the fact that we're just average Joes.
That's it.
Why the title of our YouTube channel is Blue Collar American. The blue collar is the middle class. Blue collar is the
which they're trying to kill,
guy.
by the way. Yeah.
100% agree with that statement. So let's unite. Let's lock arms in arms.
Yeah.
Elbow to elbow.
We've always been a melting pot.
Let's build our own community through this system of people that are like, hey, let's talk through this. Let's figure this out. We're going to have some other topics along the way when we invite some other guests in here soon who are just like us, but have another perspective. That's really what I think the whole goal
Charlie
here is.
he has a whole perspective. I mean,
Man, I love his perspective because it's been around the world.
I do too.
And it's military, and it's
That's kind of the whole point.
logistics, and it's
Yeah.
management, and it's,
When we're talking about locking arms with each other as the middle class and making things happen, that comes from a spot in my heart anyway, and I know it does yours too. We know there's other people out there with different beliefs than us. We are great friends with a lot of them. I mean, you and I
if
both.
all
have
of
been.
us were the same, then we would all be robots, and this would be a really boring place.
It'd be so boring. But my point being is that just because we're different doesn't mean we can't have that common goal. That's how it started. Because at some point in the past, we did agree on a piece of paper that we call our Constitution. We all agreed on it. We all followed it. We all believed in it. And I think we can get there again. I mean, one way or
I'd
the
love
other.
to.
I
I'd
really
love to,
do.
and that's actually what, from a spiritual and religious perspective, is the goal.
Yeah.
That's the Great Commission. In
Yes.
that respect, is to not just lay down and be quiet, but rather to stand up
Love
and
it.
stand firm.
Yep. Let's do it.
So
I'm gonna put that. I'm gonna give you the name of that book. Put it, and then we can put it in the notes.
all right.
Because it's great, seriously. And it all this stuff that we're talking about, whether it comes from wanting to change where you live or wanting to change, whatever, it all starts with the little habits. And,
Yes.
and we've all got it written on our heart what we need to do.
So we'll put the book in the show notes, and I want to encourage you, anyone who is watching this, all three of you, or however many people we get on board, we invite your comments.
Yes.
But caveat, we don't want comments. No one wants to see comments that is negative criticism for just the sake of being a contrarian.
Yeah.
Rather, the whole purpose of this show, and you watching
You can say things like your video sucks, your sound sucks, but
I would invite you to help us.
Yeah.
We are open to being helped. We are open to another perspective, because that's what the show is supposed to be about. Is my perspective helps Paul. Paul's perspective helps me. My wife's perspective helps me, and Melissa's perspective helps you.
Yeah.
So let's add on to that.
Yeah.
If we need technological help, then help me. I'm not going to say I know everything there is to know about how to do this.
Yeah.
If it comes to, let's talk about politics, let's talk about religion, let's talk about technology, let's talk about, I already said that, any other subject that we bring up in here, I invite you to comment. I would love to be able to get to the place where in a year from now, we're able to have not just digital guests via Zoom calls or whatever involved in this. I don't know how to do that right now, but we'll get there. If it's somebody else sitting in my little office with
maybe
us,
even a studio in the future,
potentially
we've
a
talked
studio.
about that, yeah, all kinds of things.
We're not aspiring towards any one goal with this show other than giving perspective. And with that means that we agree to a disagree as one thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're here to help each other out.
Yeah. And it's like you and I talked in the beginning. We're not trying to push our beliefs on anybody. No. We're just not doing that. It's gonna come up because it's the way you and I believe.
But we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna want to maybe reason and logic with each other. We've had our disagreements in the past,
for sure.
You and I. Yeah. But we work it through. And when you figure that stuff out, because when you're by yourself and you only think through one perspective, you get stuck in a hole.
Yep.
You've drilled and drilled and drilled, and you're deep in your own hole.
Yep.
What if that wasn't a hole? Because you got somebody else to be like, nope, before you spin out.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
And you've done
No, I didn't see that. Oh my gosh.
It's all about perspective. Yeah. And you've done that for me so many times. Yeah. And I love that. So, yeah. And we want to do that for you. I want us to do that for you anyway, because it's helped me so much.
Absolutely.
So,
all right. Well, let's close this down. Okay. And thanks for you guys' time. Thanks for your time, Paul. Thanks for the good beer.
Yeah.
Love to talk about little beers.
Well, yeah. We'll have to do that
every once in a while.
Yeah, we got to do that. And I've got to get more studied on that, because I always rely on your perspective with beer, because you know more about that than I do.
Well, we should talk IPAs then another time, and then we'll bring in some whiskeys another time too, because I love learning about different kinds of whiskeys.
It's a craft.
Absolutely.
Like you and I have talked since day one. It's a craft, and it's a very skilled
I'd love to
craft.
sit here and be smoking a cigar, but my wife won't let me do that indoors. And it's snowing outside, so I can't just go sit outside.
Yeah, right. So,
We could talk through the craft of a cigar, but we'll do that later. Um, all right, guys. Thanks for your time.
yeah.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us as well so that we can keep giving you updates as to all these subject matters that we're talking about. And we want to hear from you. So until next time, thanks for joining in.
Thanks, guys.